The wind howled through the barren trees, a bitter force that clawed at the earth and stripped the landscape of any softness. Marin Hawk stood at the threshold of her cabin, her breath fogging in the bitter cold. Snow stretched out in every direction, a pristine, unforgiving sea of white. Above her, the sky was a canvas of pale gray clouds, heavy with the weight of an impending storm. The world felt still, almost too still, yet beneath that silence, a pulse of urgency thrummed in her chest. Before her, sprawled in the snow, lay a massive form, half buried, its chest barely rising and falling. The dark brown fur of the bear was matted with blood and dirt, her once towering frame reduced to something fragile and broken. Nearby, two small cubs huddled together, their bodies trembling as they nuzzled their mother, seeking warmth in a world that had turned colder with every passing moment. Marin's heart squeezed in her chest. She knew the rules of the wild. Every creature had its place, and survival was a harsh game. But in this moment, those rules felt irrelevant. There was something primal stirring within her, a fierce compassion that couldn't be ignored. Her hand shook as she gripped the rifle slung across her shoulder. The weight of the weapon felt like a curse now. It was meant to protect, to ensure her own survival against the threats of the wilderness. But what good was it now, when the real danger was not the predators stalking the forest, but the fragile lives that depended on her mercy? The snow crunched beneath her boots as she took a step forward, eyes locked on the bear's form. She could feel the cold creeping into her bones, but it was nothing compared to the chill of uncertainty that gnawed at her insides. The storm would only worsen. There was no way the bear would survive out here, not with her injuries, not with the wolves drawing closer. Marin swallowed hard, torn. Her mind screamed to leave, to retreat to the safety of her cabin and let nature take its course. But her feet were already moving, driven by something deeper than reason. Her fingers tightened around the rifle stock, not to use it, but to steady herself. She couldn't just walk away. The wind picked up again, carrying with it the distant low growl of wolves. The sound made her freeze. She knew what that meant. The pack was near, drawn by the scent of blood, sensing an easy meal. If she didn't act fast, the bear and her cubs would be lost, not just to the storm, but to the cold, calculating nature of the predators that roam the land. A second growl pierced the air, closer this time. Her body stiffened, instincts flaring. She didn't have much time. Her mind raced through the options. The cubs needed warmth. They needed protection. But bringing them inside the cabin, bringing a wounded bear into her home, was a risk that could prove deadly for both her and her daughter. But then, as if the universe itself had made the decision for her, the cub's quiet whimpers reached her ears, piercing through the storm's howl. Marin's heart cracked. She couldn't leave them. Not now. Not like this. With no more hesitation, she knelt beside the mother bear, careful not to startle her. The beast's eyes flickered open, glazed with pain, but still filled with the fierce, protective instinct of a mother. Marin's voice was a whisper, barely audible against the wind. "It's all right. I'm here. You're safe." The bear's heavy head shifted slightly, brushing against the snow. Marin reached out slowly, her fingers trembling as she brushed a strand of the bear's fur. She could feel the warmth still radiating from the animal, the fire of life, though it was waning. But the bear wasn't the only one in danger. The cubs, too, were vulnerable. Marin moved them carefully, wrapping them in blankets and carrying them to the porch. They were tiny, their bodies small and fragile, but already they had begun to trust her, curling up into the warmth she provided. By the time Marin returned to the cabin, the storm had worsened. Snow lashed against the windows, and the air inside felt thick with the weight of what she had just done. She had opened her door to the unknown. The risk was as palpable as the cold that seeped through the walls. But she couldn't turn back now. She had made her choice. The following days blurred together in a haze of care, exhaustion, and growing attachment. Maren melted snow for water, carried food scraps to the porch, and kept a watchful eye on the cubs. They were too young to understand the danger they were in, but Maren felt a growing connection to them. Each small, tender gesture felt like a promise. She would protect them, even if it meant sacrificing everything she had. Outside the window, the storm raged, and Maren kept herself busy, her mind spinning with the ever-present worry. What would happen once the bear's strength returned? Would it stay? Would it leave? Her daughter, Maya, was fascinated by the creatures. The young girl would press her face to the glass, wide-eyed, her voice full of innocent wonder. "Are they going to stay with us forever?" Maya asked one afternoon, her small hands pressed against the cold window. Maren smiled softly, her heart heavy. "No, sweetheart, they belong in the wild, but for now, they're our guests." Days turned into weeks. The bear's strength returned, its once shattered body slowly healing. The cubs, too, began to thrive, growing stronger each day. One morning, Maren opened the door to find the blankets untouched, the small family gone. Tracks led away from the porch, winding through the deep snow into the heart of the forest. A deep ache settled in Maren's chest. They had survived. But the cost was always there. There was no way to escape it. She watched the tracks disappear, her heart torn between relief and sorrow. They had made it. She had made a difference. In the weeks that followed, Maren found herself reflecting on the experience more often than she cared to admit. The wilderness had changed her, not in the way she had expected. She had come here seeking solitude, to document the cycles of nature, to watch from a distance. But now the wilderness had claimed her, wrapped her in its harsh reality, and demanded more than she ever thought she could give. And it wasn't just the animals. It was Maya, too. The way her daughter laughed now, the way her tiny hands reached for Maren's when they went outside. It all felt more precious, more real than ever before. On one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the snow, Maren stood on the porch once more. The rifle above the door was untouched, its cold steel a reminder of the storm they had survived. But in her heart, she knew the wilderness would never be conquered. It wasn't meant to be. It was a force of nature, to be respected, not tamed. In the distance, a low growl echoed through the trees, followed by the distant call of a wolf. Maren smiled, imagining the bear and her cubs thriving in the wild, their strength renewed by the bond they had shared with her. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, a quiet assurance that, despite everything, they had all been part of something greater. She wrapped her arms around herself and breathed in the cold air. The wilderness had changed her, not through its beauty, but through its demands, its reminders that life was fragile, precious, and fleeting. The world had never felt more alive, and for the first time in a long time, Maren was at peace.